Moxley should have been the savior of this company because of the passionate promos he has cut about AEW. From where he started in CZW to being a top guy in WWE to not wanting to be there anymore to believing in AEW, blah, 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 came over with his wife. You can incorporate all of that. If anybody is going to spill blood for AEW, it should have been Jon Moxley.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's great. But then you have to think of who would have been the protagonist as the heels. I don't know who that group was.
The House of Black. And I know that doesn't fit right now. And if that would be my choice by default because of something that hit me last night. If I had my druthers, it would not be the House of Black. It would be, I have something, and I've had it for a long time now, and I am not letting the cat out of the bag. But there is a bigger story here for AEW where Moxley could have been the savior. But man, when I saw House of Black last night, I'll just leave it at this because I don't want to get off track here. When you see those three men together, you tell me who else in that company could take on those three men. Nobody. Not Moxley, not Claudio, not Pac, not nobody. Those three guys would knock everybody into next Thursday. But they have not given House of Black the time to develop and get that mystique and aura and this and that. But they could have worked.
I agree. And I totally agree. And the fans love Jon Moxley too much for him to be that. Hey, listen, they almost killed Bryan Danielson. And yet still Moxley is liked by that AEW fan base. So I don't know what it would take for Moxley to be that hated. And I think the only person, and listen, you threw out Orange Cassidy. We know Darby Allin is a big part of this story. To me, the only person that works to go up against Moxley, where the fans would turn their backs on Moxley and support that babyface, to me, the only person is Eddie Kingston. And I don't know if Eddie Kingston's healthy enough to return right now. I don't know where he is.
But who would Eddie Kingston come to the rescue of? If you really want to put heat on Moxley, if you want to light a fire under him, how do we get this guy hated? I'm just taking your scenario and turning it into a story. Yeah. How do we make Jon Moxley so hated that Eddie Kingston is the savior? Who's the conduit between Moxley and Kingston that Moxley could take his frustrations out on?
Renee?
His wife. His wife tries to get involved and say, Jon, what are you doing? First of all, why are you hanging out with Marina Shafir? And why are you doing this to a company that you came over to and that you convinced me to come over to? And if you wanted to bring this to the edge, obviously Moxley verbally shuts her down. But if Renee puts her hands on Jon and Jon swats her hand away, I'd go farther with this, trust me. But I'm going to keep it 2024. And Jon takes her hands and take your hands off of me. Could you imagine how much people would dislike Moxley for talking down to his wife and just implying that he would get physical with her? Now you have hatred. Now, if in your scenario, Kingston comes back and he's the savior, now they'll want to see Kingston kill Moxley.
And there's also that real-life story between Eddie Kingston and Claudio as well. So there's like real-life animosity that you could dip into. And guys, I'm just spitballing here, but when I look at the AEW roster as it is right now, the only person I think that the fans would really buy in and turn their backs on Moxley would be Eddie Kingston. To me, that's the only person that could be the savior in this scenario. What do you think?
Great choice. I was just thinking of, we can't go what I would have done in the sense of, or who, because we have to deal with what we have. Like I have, when I forgot about Darby, I liked the House of Black, and then would House of Black step up for the company to maybe help elevate those guys? I do like your House of Black to be part of this group with maybe somebody else, or maybe they stripped away everybody that Moxley loved. Because then I'm also like, the Adam Cole thing would have been another good person to rally behind AEW as a spokesperson. But for where we're at, Eddie Kingston is a great, hopefully he could get back. I do like your idea of doing that with Renee. And, Renee has said in a lot of those things, like, this is all Jon thinks about. Like, even like there's times where I don't like what Jon does. And he could say something to the effect of like, hey, this is work and this is a completely other thing. Like, don't step up in my business at work. At home is a different story. To go the heat route, it's hard in 2024 with social media. Jon doesn't have social media. He's a great person for that. But then, when your wife does work for the company, that is harder. Eddie Kingston is a great, if he's able to go. I mean, also Sting. Sting can show back up, not be the wrestler, rally the troops, and somebody is helping support them, or Sting could be like, man, because I was thinking about using my examples before. Sting was part of two waves. He was part of fighting off the Horsemen. He was part of fighting off the NWO. He's a main part of that. He could be like, guys, I've lived here before. So now if you have Sting rally round the other guys, I mean, think of Rey Mysterio got over in the cruiserweight stuff, but Rey also stepped up to help the company in WCW. So you do have options, and hopefully they just need a little bit more star power, because the guys that they have eaten so many L's throughout. This is a place to try to build them up.
We can't really sit here and speculate about. We have to use the players that are on the field right now, and I do agree with him. I like if Kingston is on the back burner and ready to come back into the game, that's fine. Let's assume he's not. We can still get there with Moxley and Renee, and what I would do with them is I would advertise a sit-down face-to-face. Renee Paquette to interview Jon Moxley. Wow. Wife interviewing husband, to sit down. We know where Moxley's at. And the cameras are rolling. And Jon Moxley is sitting there face to face with his wife. And Marina Shafir is standing right behind Jon Moxley. How uncomfortable is that shot right there?
Extremely awkward and uncomfortable.
And Renee can't even get out the first question because she's so distracted by Marina Shafir standing there. And eventually Renee is able to get it out. And Jon answers. And he answers very curt. I think curt means very short and sweet and to the point. Excuse me. Yes and no. One word answers. And Renee tries to get out another question. And eventually Renee has to say, you know what? Can we stop these cameras rolling? I can't do this. And the cameras stop rolling. But in the corner of the room was a production assistant. And what did that production assistant do that it seems like everybody is doing out there in the world today? Pulls out their cell phone. Pulls out their cell phone just like they did, kind of with Kevin and Cody. And in the corner of the room, the cell phone picks up the conversation, the very uncomfortable conversation, the very tense conversation. Jon, what the hell is wrong with you? And why is she always around you? And why are you doing this? And this is not good. This is affecting our family life. This is affecting work. This is affecting everything. Who are you? I don't know who you are anymore. And you catch this all fly on the wall. And that's when Jon yells at his wife. Create the tension. Create the uncomfortable scenarios. Set the table for whoever is going to be the hero down the road.
And Bully, I think in that scenario, first of all, I love it together. I even love it separate. I love the fact that you could have a sit down with Renee, or kind of like what they did with Kevin Owens and Cody, where you catch this real life argument between Moxley and his wife outside of the arena or in the back or however you want to film it. But also, it doesn't ever have to get physical. It doesn't even have to be just Moxley getting in Renee's face and raising his voice would be enough for people to be like, how dare you? Because Renee is so beloved, just that action alone, people would gasp if that actually happened. And that would get people to turn their backs on Moxley.
You guys were just saying about how the AEW fan is so smart. They know John and Renee are together. How come Renee is not pissed off that Moxley's been hanging out with another chick for the past 2 months?
Or how, like, you have all these backstage interviewers, and Renee is one of them, how nobody's even approached Renee to say, how do you feel about everything that's going on right now?
There's so many great layers to this, and I'm going to give them every opportunity to peel back those layers, because we're still kind of in the infantile stages of this story unfolding, and maybe in Moxley's mind, this is going to play out over a year. Whether or not the AEW fan base has that attention span, and not that I'm not calling anybody stupid, whether they want to invest that much time and energy into a story as opposed to quick hit matches, we shall see.
We're talking about Moxley, this new faction, and where it may be headed, and who's going to be the savior when it's all said and done. It's time to speculate because AEW is building on the story. A nice thread of the story throughout Dynamite last night. We'll get more into Dynamite as well. But I'm just going to throw this out, Tommy and Bully. Is there any scenario here with this new Blackpool Combat Club where Moxley and the crew could be babyfaces? And the only reason why I bring this up is the verbiage that Jon Moxley is using. He talks about his love for AEW. He doesn't believe that AEW has hit its full potential. He kind of compared it to them being a caterpillar and wants them to be a butterfly. He keeps saying that this is all for the greater good of the company. So he never uses words like, destroying or just, nothing like that. It feels like in the verbiage of his promo, the greater good. So is there any way, Tommy, that when it's all said and done, that Moxley could be, to Bully's point earlier, the babyface in this situation?
I don't see how. If you're the flag bearer of a company, you do want to do everything right by that company, but what next level? If it was, hey, we got a new TV deal, we're going to be around for 5 years because they like what we saw, or this boost in the ratings is exactly what we did, or if it's the kick in the ass the team needs to go to the playoffs, something like that. I don't see it. I am stuck on the Bully idea with Renee, and I actually love it.
It's a great idea.
And here's we're three people talking about pro wrestling, and I'm sure about the nation. We're all listening. This is a creative process, and because I think of it and everything he said, because listen, I deal with a lot of wrestling couples, and maybe they wouldn't want to go the route of why are you with another woman? But if she's asking Moxley these questions, giving short answers, the interview is crap. And then what if she says something and then Marina shows up behind Renee, making her uncomfortable? And then that whole thing, I'm not going to do this, or she goes to get up and Marina shoves her back down. It's how dare you? Get your hands off me. And
Ooh.
she can grab her arm and be like, stop. And then John, and look for her husband to do something. And he could be like, don't ever get in it's Michael Corleone. Don't ever get involved in the family business ever again. And then you're like, what a scumbag you are. That type of situation. I love the camera thing. It's also, you could even do it without a production person shooting it. When Magnum TA got jumped in the locker room, you push the cameraman down and the camera's still rolling and you get that conversation. And it's do not come home tonight. Do not come home for the next, don't come home anymore. You're never going to see your daughter again. If you wanted to take it to that level, but I don't know if people in 2024 are willing to do that. I just saw something on social media, and people, their real life was a complete conflict of what is going on television. And I was like, I hate it, but I understand it because I have to, because it's 2024. But anyway, I love your idea, but because Marina could do really whatever physicality, so then you don't get into domestic, you don't get into every bullshit stuff that what people see on television when wrestling happens, and they view that as real. So, and there's fallback.
So, Dave, you asked the question earlier of how you get people to hate Moxley. I gave you the conduit in Renee. I gave you an idea. Tommy built on that idea. That's how it's done, and that's how you make it realistic, and that's how the heat not only sets but sticks. Now, ask me the question that you asked Tommy.
But before I ask you that question, I want to just highlight what you just said, Bully, and the fact that in 45 minutes in this conversation that we've had on this show, I think you two guys built a story that I would be completely invested in, and I think fans would be completely invested in. And I love what Tommy just said about Marina Shafir. All the physicality could come from her. And going back to what you said, Bully, all it has to start with is Renee saying, John, what has gotten into you? Like that right there, that one line is the starting point that I think would grab people's attention, and you two just took it to a different stratosphere. So that definitely works. But I did ask the question, Bully, of...
Hold on. Before you ask the question,
go ahead.
Let me explain something to you. When me and Fathead in the other Zoom box over there, when we are on, there's no two... I'll put us up against any storytellers in the entire wrestling business. Anybody. I'll fucking slaughter them all. That's how strongly I feel about our ability to tell stories. And that's just because I'm proud of what we have done over 20 years. We don't always agree. We argue a lot. But the stories that we have told are hard to touch. I broke his wife's neck. And we circled back that story 20 years later. Now ask me the question again.
Okay, and I was giving you your props there, you and Tommy. Could Jon Moxley be the babyface?
I agree when you compliment him.
No. What I'm saying is, I'm very confident. It's almost frustrating. What I meant by this is, you said in 45 minutes we just came up with all the blah, blah, blah. It's very frustrating to sit back and see so much potential, see the talent right there, the stories right there, the potential right there, and know what we could come up with in the snap of a finger that would work, and then you just don't see it happen for whatever reason.
Or the fact, hang on, that we also have lived it, like the invasion angle. There was so much and so many, and then you see the numbers it does, and then you see the numbers it didn't. And we were in the car together. Hey, we got this. For me, ECW One Night Stand 2005 to 2006. And I'm like, I won the fucking Super Bowl for you, Vince. And this show didn't even get you to the playoffs. How can you equate the two? And I said that to him a long time ago. You're supposed to be this great business person. How does this equate to great business? And he looked at me and said, you're right. And then I had no response. But when you see things like this happen, you don't want this to happen. I am heavily invested in this story. And listen, man, there's forget about how I feel about people personally, like, because I do feel there's a lot of great stars in AEW, and I want them to be elevated, and I want this storyline to elevate everybody. Because what are we talking about with WWE? All of our baby faces got elevated, and their business really, really took off with some good creative. This is a storyline that you can get around, that at the end of the day, you want your people chanting what? AEW. and this is what we want, and also for like bullying myself. Hey, our company, I mean, he went away, but he did come back because he loved it so much, work for free in Queens. But like for me, I tell you all the time, I know I am the way I am because of loss. Most of those people, they didn't care when WCW went out of business because they were making a crap full of money. But if you would have well, guys, if you didn't understand, if you didn't do this, this, and this, you probably might still be here.
Yeah, but your guys' words are hitting with me as a fan because they ring true. Like, you have a new company in AEW, and we've talked about that, only been around for 5 years. Well, to make sure you succeed and that you're around for a much longer time, you have to put people around you that are going to help you succeed. Tommy, you know this in mainstream sports, like a general manager or an owner. What's the most important job when an owner first takes over a team? Who's going to be my general manager? Who's going to be my head coach? Who do I trust enough that has enough knowledge and experience as a general manager and a head coach that are going to build a team, that are going to potentially be winners, and that are going to coach a team?
What knowledge and experience, I don't mean to cut you off, but I got it. What knowledge and experience has Tony Khan surrounded himself with?
That's the big question.
Correct.
Like, that's the question.
First of all, what knowledge and experience did Tony Khan have on his own? And what knowledge and experience? And if you're an entrepreneur, which I take, if you're an entrepreneur, that's fine. But a good entrepreneur will surround himself with knowledge and experience. So Tony Khan, the entrepreneur who got into the pro wrestling business, where is you? You got Jim Ross right there. JR's right there. All the wealth of knowledge and experience you need. You think he's tapping into JR? Nope. I can go on and on and on. But
I think our very own Mark Henry would be an example of that. He's not there anymore.
There's so many guys there that have been to the dance, been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and the $1 million paycheck. Real quick, Tommy talked about the invasion angle, which most people think was botched, right? The most money I ever made in one night. And there were 9 other guys in the ring with me. A botched story did that kind of business. That invasion pay-per-view, the 5-on-5 match, the main event, I'd never been paid that much money in one night. And that was with a story where if you would have left it up to me and Tommy, holy shit.
And now, why did it go away? Ego. They had
Back to your question.
They had to win the fake war. You already won. But you could have continued that. And they dropped the ball once with the WCW thing, and then they had to have ECW come and save it again and light fire on something that died. And then but it's hard to convince. So go on.
I just wanted to say, to your question, Dave, could Moxley and his crew be the baby faces? That's what you asked Tommy, right? He's like, I really don't know how. Here's my question to you. If, when the story gets to its end, and Moxley and his crew are the baby faces, who are the heels? So you're sitting in your production meeting right now. You're sitting in creative, and this is your idea, and the boss says, okay, who's the heel?
It would have to be the Young Bucks. From what I see right now, especially since they're backing off and they're not getting involved, it would be the EVPs. It would be the Young Bucks.
The Young Bucks don't have that type of heat. Unfortunately, the Young Bucks within the AEW fan base have that go away, change the channel type of heat. Bad taste in people's mouths. I completely disagree with the AEW fans who dislike Matt and Nick. I'm a big fan of Matt and Nick. I like what they do. But the Young Bucks are not the heels here.
But then it's almost hard. And I guess anybody with this angle, if you build them up the right way, could be the heel. I'm just judging from what we're seeing right now and what we have to play with. It's an uphill battle, Bully, because I agree with you and Tommy in the fact that I've said it from day one since he came to AEW, that the man who could be the face of AEW is Jon Moxley. So I'm trying to think of a scenario where you could turn this around and have Jon Moxley be the face of AEW, where all these things about him saying the greater good, the caterpillar into a butterfly, where Jon Moxley emerges as the face of AEW. Because I think it's an uphill battle to get that AEW fan base to truly hate Jon Moxley. So I'm trying to think of the other way and who it could be.
But before you go out, I understand we're talking fantasy here, we're in fun radio. But if you're going to go into a meeting, a creative meeting, let's just take Vince McMahon for his example. If you're going to come in and you're going to say, well, what if Moxley is the babyface at the end of all this? Okay, Dave, fine. Who's my heel? Who is that heel that is going to garner so much heat? People are going to be so shocked by it that's going to turn Jon Moxley babyface in an instant. I don't know if they're heading in the right direction with Moxley. I don't want to between the Wild Thing entrance and the amount of work Moxley puts in and how hard he tries and all this and the IWGP championship and fighting in Bloodsport and old school CZW guy, want to wrestle also, all these things. Nobody should bear the flag. Jon Moxley should be a broken down mess every time you see him, head bandaged up. I told him this to his face. He's a modern day mix of Onita and Funk, and they should ride that until the end. But no, they have this plan in place. I'm not going to piss on it. You got to give it a chance. But to your point, if Jon is the babyface, who is the higher power heel?